Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Chase with Jace. And boy, do we have a lot to talk about on this Wednesday. As you can tell, guys, we always have the Chase with Jace, Sunday after the LSU game, and we always talk next week on Wednesdays as well to talk about the usual the week and what's coming up for LSU. But this week is a little bit different, just because you had the bye week coming up. Didn't think we would be able to talk that much during the bye week, but as everybody knows, there is a lot to talk about because we got a coaching change in Baton Rouge at LSU, and man, we do have a lot to talk about as everybody's kind of following in. But we are live right now on the Chase with Jace on all of our Gridiron Football social platforms. So we are live on Facebook. We're live on YouTube, and we're live on X. So if you're watching us on any of those channels, make sure to like us, make sure to follow us, make sure to subscribe to us. We can't appreciate your support enough. Obviously, we want to talk a lot about LSU football, but we do a lot of other stuff as well. We have a Gridiron Football All-American Bowl game coming up, and we are bringing a lot of great high school athletes to that bowl game. So we'll promote that bowl game as we get closer, but that will be December 29th and 30th. We have a junior high division and a senior division. So you can get your tickets online. You can start ordering your tickets for that. GridironFootballUSA.com. The bowl game is going to be bigger and better this year than we ever had. So we're going to be really excited about that. But obviously, you came here to listen and talk about LSU. So if you have any comments, I'm going to go over it again. If you have any comments, general questions about LSU that you want to bring up on the show, I'll make sure to interact with you on the show. So feel free to comment. Feel free to put the questions up. But just in case you've been living on a rock the last ever since Sunday, yes, Brian Kelly is no longer the head coach at LSU. LSU has decided to move on after 3.5 years with having Brian Kelly in Baton Rouge, and we'll talk about what happened there at LSU, what led to Brian Kelly's downfall, what really drove everything over, and we'll have a lot of conversations about the past, what really happened there at LSU. And what's happening in the future regarding the future of LSU, who is going to be the new head football coach. And we'll talk about maybe some candidates of who will be the next head coach at LSU. But of course, I have to address the elephant in the room, and I'm glad that Miss Melissa Ward asked us also. I mean, really appreciate Miss Melissa. I know she's been a great support of Gridiron Football over the years, and she's wondering how Mr. Andy is doing. So I have to open up the show with this as well. Andy is doing great. We really appreciate your support, Melissa. Thank you so much for the comment. Andy is doing great. He's in the hospital right now, basically recovering. He had back surgery last week, which is always also has been scheduled for a long time. So he was getting back surgery done, and there was it was a successful surgery. And then when he got out the hospital, he had been dealing with some migraines, and turns out he's been dealing with we call like a back fluid, dealing with that. So we been rushed back to the hospital, but it's a lot of pain management right now. But just keep Andy in your thoughts and prayers. I know Andy's always been a selfless guy. He's always worried about others. He's more worried about Kristen and the kids. So if you do me a favor, do a solid. Make sure to keep Andy and his family in your thoughts and prayers at this time. We really appreciate it. But he's doing fine. He's resting, and to be honest with you, he wants to get back to work. But I told him, like, hey, Andy, I need you for the long term, especially when we have the bowl game and all the events we got coming up. So make sure to rest up, make sure you're good, and then we can get you back at full speed. So that's what we want you back. So I appreciate Miss Melissa for the comment and asking about Andy. But Andy, he's the boss man here at Gridiron Football, and he's doing fine. And I'm glad he's doing good because I won't have a job. But jokingly aside, Andy He's doing really well. Appreciate your support, and we just want to ask you continued support for Andy and his family as time. And I think that's the best thing that you can do. So I really appreciate Miss Melissa for starting that off with Andy. But Andy's doing fine, just addressing the elephant in the room there. But I appreciate the support. All right. So yeah, a lot to talk about with going back to LSU. And yeah, just in case you've been living on a rock the last couple of days, yes, LSU does have a new head football coach, at least in the interim, and that is Frank Wilson. But Brian Kelly, 3.5 years at LSU, was the head coach. It's kind of crazy because I got hired at Gridiron Football, and Brian Kelly was the coach. So I actually arrived at Gridiron Football around the same time Brian Kelly arrived at LSU. So I guess I've outlasted Brian Kelly Gridiron, but 3.5 years for Brian Kelly. Look at his overall record, and I mean, you go and look at it. It's really not. I mean, it really ain't bad. I mean, you look at it, 34-14 overall, and to be honest with you, from a record standpoint, it's similar to what those predecessors did. We talk about Nick Saban, we talk about Les Miles, and we talked about Ed Orgeron. Record-wise, Brian Kelly did about the same as what they did. The difference is when we talk about Brian Kelly, we talk about the other coaches as well. Brian Kelly just could not win the big games that you're supposed to win. You look at, if you dive deeper into it more, you overlook the overall record, you overlook the 34-13 overall record, and you kind of look into more of what expected at LSU. This is all you need to know. He went 5-11 against ranked teams. I'm not talking about just like your top 5 teams, your top 10 teams when it's big games. Just throw in the fact it was ranked teams that were ranked. He went 5-11. When you're coaching at LSU, and we talk about we talk about LSU, you're talking about one of the biggest, most major universities out there in college football in terms of football. Like, you notice the last 3 coaches I talked about, Nick Saban, Les Miles, Ed Orgeron, they did something that Brian Kelly never did, and that is win a national championship, bring a national championship to LSU. So on paper, you look at it, you bring Brian Kelly here. Brian Kelly was more successful as a head coach going to LSU than at the point when the 3 predecessors took over at LSU. You talk about resume, you talk about wins, losses, success. Brian Kelly was more successful than the predecessors were going to LSU. But they did something that Brian Kelly never did, which was bring a national championship to Baton Rouge. That is part of it, right? And those 3 guys did something in their first 4 years. They won a national championship in their 4th year. This was basically the make or break year for Brian Kelly, because you go and look at it, and it really, you talk about him getting fired. I think a lot of it also had to do with expectations, not only at LSU, but the opportunities as well. You have more opportunities to win a national championship than you did prior, right? When it was Nick Saban, you had the BC and Les Miles. When it was Nick Saban and Miles, you only had the top 2 teams. It's hard to win a national championship at anywhere back then, because you only had the BCS, and then it only allowed the top 2 teams to play for a national championship. And then for Coach O, it was the playoff was there, the college football playoff was there, but they only added 2 more teams. They only added 4 teams. So your margin of error is really slim to begin with. Like, you lose 1 game in the past, you're done. Like, your hopes for a national championship, an SEC championship, all that can be out the window. But now with the expanded playoff, you can afford an extra loss. You can afford 2 losses. And because they expand playoffs, there's 12 teams. It's going to be expanded even more to 16. And just the fact with the expanded playoff that LSU, even those years with Les Miles and even some with with Coach O, especially the 2018 year, you've been good enough to make the college football playoff a lot of those years. And Brian Kelly, his teams at LSU, with an expanded college football playoff, let's just face the facts, they weren't good enough to be at least in the conversation for a college football playoff. When you're talking about LSU, a place that is prideful about their football tradition and what Nick Saban built here at LSU, that is underwhelming. That is not what LSU fans signed up for. That is not what Scott Woodward signed up for when he paid this massive contract. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. And then is not asked what the board of supervisors, the head honchos over LSU. That's not what they've signed up for with Brian Kelly. They brought Brian Kelly here because they thought that he can bring LSU a national championship. And Brian Kelly came to LSU because he thought that he pretty much did what he could do at Notre Dame, and then would add in just the great athletes at LSU, the state of Louisiana, the recruiting base that's in, the recruiting hotbed that you're in Louisiana, that, hey, I can go and work with this and win a national championship, and you haven't come close to doing that in 4 years. Your first year you came in, I thought Brian Kelly did his best coaching job at LSU his first year when he came here. And I think that is what Brian Kelly's strength is as a CEO when he first got here was, I think Brian Kelly, and I've said this a whole lot, Brian Kelly reminds me a lot of James Franklin in the fact that, okay, you talk about the big win. I mean, not being able to win the big game. I mean, that is something we talk about with both these coaches. But I think what both these two coaches do well is that they can come in a situation and they can build it up. And you look at James Franklin, he did that at Penn State and built that, which was a really tough situation after the Joe Paterno stuff and everything, the Jerry Sandusky stuff. And he built that up to a respectable program once again in college football. Remember what the situation was when Brian Kelly took over as LSU's coach. LSU only had about 39 scholarship players when he took over. And that first year, they went to the SEC championship game and they beat Alabama. So he exceeded his first year, and knowing what he did at Notre Dame, that just escalated even more. It's like, okay, if you're doing this in your first year with 39 scholarship players, then you should be able to do this in year 2 and year 3. Cameron Cerniglia appreciate Cameron. Congratulations, man. Was at his engagement party as well with Cameron and Haley. So Cameron's always been a really good buddy of mine, and always appreciate his support. So Cameron, let's see. Had there been a 12-team playoff the whole time BK was at LSU, he would have only made it 1 out of his 4 years. Yeah. Okay, I guess basically that's a statement. Yeah, had there been a 12-team playoff the whole time because it was LSU. Yep. So he would have made it that first year. Yeah, I guess it would have been his first year. The second year, I'm not sure if they were the outside looking in. I got to see what their final rankings were those first 2 years, but that second year was his best shot at a national championship. They had the offense. You had Jaden Daniels. You had Malik Neighbors. You had Brian Thomas. You had those guys. That was his best shot at a national championship. They just totally dropped the ball on the defensive side of the football. Matt House as your defensive coordinator, everybody's going to give Matt House a lot of bad, right? Because of that year, but his first year he was not a bad defensive coordinator. I think he was a big reason why LSU overachieved that first year, because you had a lot of guys there that second year. But I just thought that the defense, they couldn't have been, even below average. I mean, they were just terrible. I mean, there were times, that Ole Miss game, LSU scored on every drive but one, and it still was not enough to win that game. Like, you can't ask your defense to give us 2 stops. Like, that was a crying shame, because that offense, Jaden Daniels, that whole offense was good enough to win you a national championship, but you did not have the defense to support it. If you had even if you had last year's defense, you had the 2024 defense, you had this year's defense, that would have been plenty of good enough for you to go and win the national championship or even make the college football playoffs at the very least. But yeah, I would say that first year, I got to go back and check and see what their final rankings were in those years in the final, I guess, college football playoff ranking. But you lost. You had a great shot your first year when you clinched the SEC West in 2022, and you had a shot. Like, hey, maybe win out. You beat Texas A&M, and then you go and play Georgia, and you beat Georgia in the SEC championship. You're in, but LSU did not do that when they lost. So actually, I think the college football playoff ranking had them at number 12. So, and that was 2022. I'm gonna double check. No, 17. So they finished 17 in 2022. So, I mean, I would say that second year would have been probably his best shot with the offense they had. It's just the defense was obviously lackluster. And then the year 3 last year, it was a little bit of a transition year. You know, you have a new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. You have a new quarterback and Garrett Nussmeier. So you understood that year 3 was a little bit of a transition year. But you set up 2024 to be like this year in 2025. Like, okay, this was the year, the all-in year. This is year number 4, right? This was the year to get it right. This is the year to lead LSU to a college football playoff berth. And that would have obviously saved Brian Kelly's job if they would have made the college football playoff. But not only did they not make the college football playoff or not making the college football playoff, but they're basically their dreams of making that college football playoff have ended before November's even hit. So I think it was that time. I mean, I think you saw when LSU lost how ugly it was and how uncompetitive it was. I talked about, he won games at LSU. You look at the records comparing Brian Kelly and the other coaches before him. I mean, they were comparable, in terms of an overall win-loss record. He won the games he was supposed to win. But when it was time in the crunch time to win the big game, and that's what Notre Dame fans were warning everybody, that he cannot win the big games. And when it was time for LSU, the opportunity rose for them to win the big games. He just couldn't do it on a consistent basis. I mean, he did beat Alabama his first year. That was a big game. He beat Ole Miss last year in the upset. But too many times when it was really on the line, LSU did not play their best football, and they a lot of times weren't competitive. I've covered the only 3 major losses at home. LSU hasn't lost much at home under Brian Kelly, but the times that I've covered a game in Tiger Stadium where they lost, let's just say they were not pretty. We're talking about his first year, the Tennessee game in 2022. That was a blowout. LSU left the stadium in the second half, and special teams was a nightmare. Hendon Hooker was really burning LSU's defense all game long. Jaden Daniels obviously wasn't the Jaden Daniels he was in year 2. Then the second bad loss was at night, was last year, the Alabama game. That's when they couldn't stop Jalen Milroe from running the football. And this was a game, a prime example, right? This is twice. Your last 2 big night home losses in Tiger Stadium and Death Valley came when the chips are on the table. Like, you have to win this game. It's a playoff situation. You have to win this game to keep your playoff hopes alive. And you just basically crap the bed. That's what you do. You don't only lose. It's one thing to lose. It's one thing to lose at home at night in front of your fans, and your fans totally leave the stadium by the end of the third quarter. That is another thing to talk about, another whole thing to talk about. And at LSU, when you expect winning, everybody talks about how much of a home field advantage you have in Tiger Stadium at night, and that's when you've lost in some big ways. Brian Kelly's won a lot. He's won a lot at LSU. He just hasn't won enough. LSU's one of those jobs that if you're good, it's still going to be underachieving. They expect LSU fans expect greatness. They expect elite at an elite level. But out of those years, really, Cameron, his best shot at a college football playoff would have been one time. We had really two times. The first one would have been the first year, and that is if they would have won out. After two losses, they bounced back with an Ole Miss win, Alabama win. And I think that's as good as it really got for Brian Kelly that first year. Going to the SEC championship game. They did lose that. They lose that game to Texas A&M. But if he would have won that A&M game, and they would have won, which would have been a tall task because that Georgia team was pretty much nearly unbeatable. But if you would be in Georgia, you would have been in the college football playoff. And then year two, really what hurt that team that year was the Ole Miss loss. Losing like that in a shootout on the road. I think that's what really hurt that team that year. But you lose to Florida State, lose to Alabama, you're in. But those first 2 years were really his best shot at LSU to compete for a college football playoff. And it's just crazy saying that it never happened and never folded. I never thought I was one of those guys, Brian Kelly. I was a Brian Kelly supporter, to be honest with you. I thought that knowing his background, his proven record, I thought it would have been just enough for him to get over the hump as a coach because he's had a bunch of success going into LSU. But there's going to be other factors to talk about, not just the win-loss record. There's going to be a couple things I'll also talk about Brian Kelly and his demise at LSU. Melissa Ward with another comment. I've lost count, but I think like 18 committed players coming. How many do you think will stay committed, or are they waiting to see who the next coach will be? So, Melissa, I think LSU is one of those programs where just look at their track record, right? Look who's been their head coaches. It's been – Nick Saban was the one who really started this, right? They moved on with him with Les Miles. They moved on from him with Ed Orgeron, right? LSU is one of those places where a player can commit to the university, to the name brand, to LSU, and not have good really idea on who the coach could be. Now, there's going to be some positions where it really matters, and I think those positions are going to really question it. Like if you are a quarterback that is getting recruited by LSU, you kind of want to know who the coach is because you want to see what system they want to run. Are they going to be an RPO offense? Are they going to be a pro-style offense? Are they going to be spread? Are they going to run a air raid? Like what are they going to bring to LSU? What offense are they going to bring to LSU? So quarterback position might be a little different, but for all these other positions like, your running backs, your receivers, based off past pedigree of all the great players that have gone through LSU at those positions, because you're always going to have great skilled players in Louisiana. Louisiana has always been a great state for skilled players. So you can always have them there. But the state of Louisiana is always going to have great players. And you're going to sell defensive linemen, linebackers, safeties, all those guys, right? You can sell LSU on just LSU without a coach. That's why I don't think the recruiting class right now, and you said 18 committed players, a lot of them are from the state of Louisiana. And that is the one thing that every head coach, no matter who it is, when you go to LSU, you have to prioritize the state of Louisiana. Because I've covered the state of Louisiana for a long time. And covering high school football. Over 10 years. I can put up the state of Louisiana against pretty much about anybody in terms of the talent, the skill talent every single year. No matter if you're talking about North Louisiana, you're talking about Southwest Louisiana, New Orleans, Baton Rouge. There's football talent all over the state. So that's always not going to be lacking. And a lot of those guys that are committed in this class, Miss Melissa, are from the state of Louisiana. You go and look at Ed in the car. That they're the top team in Louisiana right now. They are the king of the mountaintop. Look at them. They have 2 players right now currently committed in this class. Richard Anderson, Aiden Hall. Richard Anderson's a defensive tackle. Aiden Hall's a safety. I've called their games before against Catholic. They're both great football players, and they are really good. I mean, you have a player that committed after Brian Kelly was fired. You actually gained the commitment after Brian Kelly was fired. So why is that? Just because Curvin Johnson, he's a wide receiver from Tioga, three-star athletes, three-star wide receiver. Tioga's having a great season this year, and he's one of the state-leading receivers in the state. And he's a great track athlete. Louisiana Tech gave him an offer. He's kind of one of those late bloomers, right? And then LSU was kind of tracking him and see, for him to be on their list. And he's just a guy. He just got an offer from LSU. He's a Louisiana guy from Central Louisiana. He took a picture. You probably saw with DJ Chark on the sidelines. He's ecstatic. If I'm a three-star guy that just got an offer from my institution, from the team I cheer for in Louisiana, I'm ecstatic. And I think Curvin Johnson got the offer on Saturday, and then even though it was after Brian Kelly got fired, like, hey, I got offered by LSU. I want to play at LSU. There's kids that want to put on the purple and gold and play for LSU. And Frank Wilson, Corey Raymond, all these guys that are probably going to stay. They're probably going to keep their jobs. I would guess so, because whoever's coming in, you need to keep your Louisiana recruiting guys on staff. You have to keep those guys that help you out and make that transition and recruiting more guys in Louisiana, because you have to win the state of Louisiana. So if they're talking to these guys like, hey, we're going to be there. We want you at LSU. Represent your home state. Be a part of something special. Rebuild this. I don't think this recruiting class is going to fall apart. I really don't. Just because LSU can sell in itself. And you just seen 3 different coaches win national championships here. So the expectation's always pretty high, no matter who's going to be the coach here. Now, quarterback position, there might be a couple positions where it's going to matter a little bit more in terms of recruiting. But to answer your question, I don't think that head coach at LSU is going to be as big of a problem people think it's going to be, because I think players, they see opportunities. They want to play. Like if look at the offensive line, for example, right? You've seen the offensive line struggle. If you're an offensive lineman that's really highly recruited in the recruiting cycle, in this recruiting class, you're saying, oh, I play tackle. He's not doing so well, so I can probably have a chance to even start next year. So they are seeing a lot of that. So to answer your question, I don't think this is going to really impact recruiting negatively as much as you may think it would. But going back to Brian Kelly and talking about this Brian Kelly discussion, I want to thank Cameron and Melissa. If you have any comments, interaction, questions, feel free to chime in. We love all your comments and want you to get your reactions. And comment below. My question to you fans, to everybody that's watching, is a comment below. I want to know who your head coach is going to be. Who is the guy, if you're the athletic director, if you're in head in charge at LSU, who is the guy that you want to hire? If you're up to you, if you're making the decision, comment below. I want to see who you think you would want as the next head coach at LSU. We're going to talk about it in some of those candidates. But, yeah, feel free to comment and chime in who you think is your guy, who you want to be the head coach at LSU. But as we weigh on those comments, we'll talk about Brian Kelly. I mean, we talk about one thing was not winning the big games. Obviously, that's a big reason. You haven't won the right games, right? You haven't won the big games. That is something to talk about. Another mistake, when we talk about reasons that led to Brian Kelly to get dismissed at LSU at this point of the year, some of those decisions had to do with his assistants. I thought Brian Kelly dropped the ball on a lot of moves with his assistant coaches. And I think the first, and it's ironic, irony has been something we talk about LSU coaches. Think about all the problems Les Miles had with clock management. and how that error in managing time, managing clock management in big games cost him in the end against Auburn. That's what, and that was his last game against Auburn. We talk about Brian Kelly. What was his last game against Texas A&M? Who is on the opposite sideline? Who is the strength and conditioning coach at Texas A&M? It is Tommy Moffitt. And Tommy Moffitt is going to be a huge part of the discussion on the show today because Tommy Moffitt, as LSU fans quite are aware and know if you followed LSU football, Tommy Moffitt was a huge reason why LSU is looked at as highly as they are as a big time program in college football because Tommy Moffitt was there with Nick Saban at the beginning of this build, right? Of building LSU back to being a power, right? He was there with all these national championship coaches, with Nick Saban, with Les Miles, with Ed Orgeron. He was with all of them. Tommy Moffitt was a big reason behind that. And Brian Kelly, one of his first decisions was to not retain Tommy Moffitt. And I think what a story I've heard was that Scott Woodward was going to promise Tommy Moffitt to stay. And because I think Nick Saban wanted Tommy Moffitt to be his strength and conditioning coach after Scott Cochran left. And Brian Kelly wanted to bring his own guy. So I think Tommy Moffitt was blindsided a little bit by that. And when he went to Texas A&M, I think he held a grudge, and rightfully so, because Tommy Moffitt is one of the top 2 or 3. He might be the best. I mean, really, he's really the best strength coach, conditioning coach around. There's been a lot of guys that have built careers and have become strength and conditioning coaches all over the country that have really followed Tommy Moffitt, have been a part of his tree, and Tommy Moffitt, this game really meant a lot to him, because Tommy Moffitt loves LSU. You saw how many years he contributed to LSU. He committed to LSU. So you saw that. And I think Marcel Reed had a comment after the game that that they put Brian Kelly's face on all the tackling dummies during practice. The players at Texas A&M really wanted this game for Tommy Moffitt. They played, you can tell the energy, the passion. They wanted this so much for Tommy. And it shows how much the really Tommy means to the players. You go and ask a lot of former LSU players. They love Tommy Moffitt. They want to run through a brick wall for Tommy Moffitt. And you saw that there. Texas A&M looked like the LSU teams of old. The aggressive, the confident, the swagger, of those old LSU, Les Miles, Nick Saban teams, right? They had the confidence, the swagger, the physicality. They were talking trash to LSU the whole night long, and while kicking their butt at the same time. They dominated them up front. They're the more confident team. So I would say that they took on the mold of an old LSU football team. That's because you have a guy like Tommy Moffitt running your strength and conditioning. And I think LSU has become pretty soft. And that's something I never thought I would see with an LSU team, going back to all those different coaches. They were tough, physical. They were demanding. And Tommy Moffitt was part of that culture. And you see, what Les Miles used to say about being the hammer and not the nail, right? Texas A&M was the hammer, and LSU was unfortunately the nail there. And the way they lost this game, the way that they were totally dominated in the second half on the line of scrimmage, that is not what LSU football is. I mean, one thing is with LSU football through 20 years that they were going to be, you might have beaten them, you might have been LSU, but you weren't going to get battered and bruised by them. Like you're going to get battered and bruised. You weren't going to be LSU was going to be the aggressor. And It turned out it was Texas A&M. Texas A&M was like an old-fashioned LSU football team based on their philosophy, and really, LSU looked like what Texas A&M really looked in the past. So it was kind of like a flip-flop of what these teams, what these programs really were. Because you going to the SEC, you thought Texas A&M was like the soft team, finesse type of team, and it turns out that was the opposite. And it just comes with mindset. And it turns out Brian Kelly's last game at LSU was against Texas A&M with, so happens, Tommy Moffitt on the other sideline. So that was one part of it. It's not just Tommy Moffitt. It was not bringing back on, all the other assistant coaches, right? When we talk about Corey Raymond being another one. Now, he rectified his mistakes by not retaining Corey Raymond and Blake Baker and bringing them back. But he made those mistakes in the first place. And imagine if you had Corey Raymond that year with Jaden Daniels. I'm sure your secondary would probably been a better spot, better situation than it was with Robert Steeples. And you have him there. How much difference does that make for your defense? It makes a huge difference. Maybe it'll be enough for you to make the college football playoff. Maybe that'll be enough for you. Blake Baker, the same thing. And you saw his emergence as not only the defensive coordinator, but as a linebacker coach too. So you saw his emergence right there too, as well. But those are some mistakes, right? Greg McMahon, he's another one, not retaining him as a special teams coach, because bringing Polian on and how that was a disaster for the first couple of years for not being not being great at special teams. Actually, special teams cost you games, and it's really, really cost you games, especially that Florida State, the first game he ever coached. So he missed on some of his assistants, right? Coordinators. He's missed on the coordinators. Matt House as his defensive coordinator. You cannot, if you're a major head coach, you cannot miss on your coordinators, because that led to the demise of not only Brian Kelly, but Ed Orgeron too. Now, he hit a home run when he was able to get Joe Brady as well, and Dave Aranda and those guys. But when they left, he just never could really get the right guys. And Brian Kelly just never brought the right coordinators in. Now, Mike Denbrock was a great option, an offensive coordinator, but you lost him to Notre Dame, back to your old school, right? So you lost him, and you hired Joe. You basically upgraded Joe Sloan. You gave him a promotion, and Joe Sloan has been a nightmare calling plays. It's been a nightmare calling plays for him offensively. And now Blake Baker's been pretty decent as well as your defensive coordinator. But some of those decisions on your staff have really cost you there. If you're Brian Kelly, bring the right coaches in, trying to find the right assistant coaches, that also led to his downfall. Another thing, I'll talk about one more thing. I know we have a comment from Cameron about who he wants to bring on as his head coach of choice. But before I go to that comment, I think the last thing is when we talked about not being able to win the big games and not having the right people around you. Another thing too, I think he just got satisfied. I think he just got lazy. Because when you have that big of a contract, $100 million, you get 54 guaranteed, you're pretty satisfied. You can go home and knowing that, hey, I don't really have anything to lose. And I think there's been reports about Brian Kelly enjoying his time, maybe way too much on the beach, maybe enjoying his time way too much there. But if you're at LSU and you're getting paid that much money, and you're in the SEC, you're at one of the most coveted jobs in college football. There's not a lot of people that are qualified to be at the job you're at. This is a job where you're going to have to be working 24/7, but you have to be invested in it. And I just thought that Brian Kelly, especially maybe not at the beginning, but maybe towards the last 2 years, I would say maybe towards the last 2 years, you saw that he wasn't as invested as other coaches were, as other coaches are, because I don't think you'll see Kirby Smart on the beach playing golf like during the off time. I just don't see that, right? Um, you have to be invested. You have to be bought in. You have to be totally 100% in. And I just don't think Brian Kelly was that. We talk about culture fit. To me, culture fit was maybe a little bit overrated. I thought, because I mean, Nick Saban is from West Virginia, right? Les Miles is Michigan. So I know Ed Orgeron fit. I mean, he's in Louisiana through and through. But to me, culture doesn't matter as much if you're winning. And I think another part of culture is being invested. And I don't think Brian Kelly was totally invested. I mean, not only invested, just like, I'm not saying just lock yourself up in football ops and just lock yourself in there studying film and just being 24/7 into it every single day, but just be out there with the fans. Be out there on recruiting visits, being out there, showing your face, going to schools, calling schools up, calling coaches, showing that you care, showing that you're love the state of Louisiana, and just go in and just win everybody's trust. I think the worst thing that Brian Kelly could have done was his first impression with the fans. Like, if he could have come in the PMAC and say, "Hey, I'm not a Cajun. I don't know how to peel crawfish. I don't know what. I mean, I would love to learn. I want to be part of your culture. Like, I want to help you. I want a championship, and I want to help learn more about the state of Louisiana, what it means to be in the state of Louisiana." That would probably have been better than going in there and saying, me and my family and all that, coming with the country with a Cajun accent and all of that. You just have to be able to relate to the fans, relate to the people of Louisiana, because through it all, I mean, LSU is nothing without the fans. Just so be it, because those are the people that are going to be paying the money, pay their hard-earned dollars every Saturday night to go out and watch the Tigers play. So you have to show the fans that you care and that you're all in and you're bought in, and you have to relate to them. You have to know how much it means to them. I mean, the spoiled comment. I mean, that was another example this year, right? Like, I get from his standpoint, right? You won the football game. It's hard to win the SEC. You don't want the first question to be about how bad the offense played, right? But just to say that, telling everybody that they're spoiled, that was the wrong way to approach it, because the expectations at LSU are really high. And that's why they gave you all that money. I mean, they don't give them $100 million just to win 9 games. They gave you $100 million to win, compete for national championships, compete for playoffs. You have to know the expectation there is at LSU. I think Brian Kelly loved the idea of LSU. I don't think he fully embraced the idea of LSU. And I think that's another thing that kind of led to his downfall. And at the end, when you don't have really anybody in your corner, it's really easy to fire you, to make a change like this. And what gave Les Miles another year was because the team supported him. Remember, they carried Les Miles off the field, that Texas A&M game, when everybody thought that he was going to get fired. But that really drove, really the powers to be to keep him for another year, because they knew that he didn't lose the team and the team still wanted to play for him. And I think with Brian Kelly, with BK, that just didn't happen. They didn't have enough people in his corner to really support him at the end. So those are just kind of the things there that really thought were what caused the end there for Brian Kelly at the end. So we do have a comment, like I mentioned. We talked about Brian Kelly, a whole lot about the show through the first 44 minutes. And then we're going to talk about what's ahead, what's in the future for LSU. It was, let's just say, science project didn't work out. It was a gamble. You had your last three head coaches won national championships. You hired a coach that was more proven than those previous three coaches entering their tenures at LSU. But it doesn't necessarily. There's no science. There's no exact formula to replicate that is going to work at any given time. So it's just one of those things that it either works or it doesn't work. There's no really science to it because before LSU, Brian Kelly won everywhere he went, but he just couldn't cut it. He just couldn't cut it in the SEC. Cameron, so I appreciate Cameron's. Appreciate that. Sorry for the delay on the comment on the question here. If money is no object, I like Kiffin. You probably have to pay him 13 to 15 million a year, though. If you want to spend less, I go after Summerall or Golish. Okay, so if you're trying to figure out what those names mean, obviously everybody knows about Lane Kiffin. He's Ole Miss's head coach. John Summerall, he is Tulane's head coach down the road. And you have Alex Golish. He is probably the name that if you're not familiar with, Alex Golish is the coach over at USF, at South Florida. And South Florida is having a great year this year. They beat Florida this year. They're kind of in the running for that group of 5 playoff spot this year. So we got another comment. Let's see. Melissa, has to be someone that's already doing okay because Kelly is suing already for breach of contract. Yeah, so that's a mess going on right now with Brian Kelly, for sure, Melissa, with the contract and they're negotiating right now with the buyout. I know Kelly obviously wants the $54 million, and I know that LSU said, "Hey, you got a breach of contract. We're going to pay you $27 million." So we're going to see how that goes. We have, let's see. Yep. So it looks like we have. Looks like that's Broderick. I could be wrong. That's Broderick with the comment, but it is appreciate Broderick. So I think that's him. If I'm wrong, you can correct me. Let's see. Joe Brady. So Joe Brady as the head coach at LSU. So far, let's talk about some of those guys we talked about so far. So Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin, it's going to cost you for Lane Kiffin. I mean, obviously that's the big name. That's the name that everybody wants to hire at LSU. Oh, yeah. Okay, Broderick, I see you. I appreciate you, Broderick. Thanks for the comment. And Joe Brady, we're going to definitely dissect that one as well. I appreciate the comment. We're going to definitely talk about that. Let's see. Go back to Cameron's comment. Yeah, so Lane Kiffin, I mean, he'll be great for a couple reasons for Lane. What works for Lane is, great offensive play caller. I mean, he's just an offensive mastermind, and you've seen what he's able to do as a play caller. I think he's also matured as a head coach. I think the best thing for him was we went with Nick Saban in Alabama as a play caller, and I think that's really matured him a whole lot. And you saw what he did at Ole Miss the last couple of years. I think he can possibly, basically do as much as he can with Ole Miss. Be honest with you, I think it's either Ole Miss or LSU for Lane. I don't think he's really looking at Florida. In my opinion, I think it'll really shock me if he leaves for Florida. But for me, I think it's either Ole Miss, he's staying at Ole Miss, or he's taking the LSU job. But Lane Kiffin said that money is not the only driving force behind it. He did say money is not all he's looking for being a head coach. And I truly believe he's actually happy at Ole Miss, just because of, I think he knows what his situation was. When he was a head coach, a young head coach, when he took the Tennessee job and the USC job open, and he bolted Tennessee for USC, I think that he really appreciates Ole Miss for taking a chance on him. I really do think that, just because, of all the things that he's really, all the red flags he had, whether he was as a young coach at Tennessee, at USC, with the Raiders in the NFL, like, to take a chance on him. I know he matured a lot at Alabama, but to take a chance on him, I think he's really happy at Ole Miss. I think he's content at Ole Miss, to be honest with you. And especially if they make the college football playoff, I think he now believes he can win at Ole Miss. I think if this happened a couple years ago, if this happened like 3 years ago, I think Lane Kiffin can. I think Lane Kiffin would leave for LSU if this happened 2 or 3 years ago. But I don't think he is going to leave Ole Miss. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong. He might be interested in the money. He might want to come to LSU, but I don't think he's going to leave Ole Miss for LSU because, especially if he thinks that he can win there, Ole Miss fans are happy with him there. Then I think he's satisfied at Ole Miss. Why mess up a thing that he's got going on right now to take on this challenge at LSU, who is going through how many different coaches in a matter of 10 years, So if you are him, I think I'm content with staying at Ole Miss. So you talked about Kiffin. I mean, I know you have to be in the ballpark, right? I mean, you're right, Cameron, about that. You have to be in the ballpark if you want to help bring him over here, but I don't think money is just the only driving force behind it. If you want to spend less, I go Summerall or Golish. The thing about Summerall, I like John Summerall as well. I really do. As a young coach, and this is a type of coach I really want. A young coach on the rise, somebody that's hungry, somebody that's proven. That's proven a little bit. I don't want a guy that's been a veteran head coach that just wants a paycheck. I want a guy that's young, that's still hungry to show what he can do. And this is obviously a guy, John Summerall, that is that. And this got a guy maybe consider, but I don't know if the powers to be are going to take John Summerall seriously. And the reason why is because of he's at Tulane. And it's a bad reasoning behind it because I think John Summerall should be considered for the head coach at LSU. I really do. I think he's really that good. Yeah, so that's just one of those things where with John Summerall, with Tulane, it's the same thing with Billy Napier. Look back at Billy Napier, how LSU handled that. LSU was not going to take Billy Napier seriously because he was a head coach at Little Brother at ULL. So we're not going to hire the coach at ULL, no matter how successful he is at ULL. I think LSU is going to approach the same thing with the powers to be. They're going to look at John Summerall like, oh, that's cute. You're at Tulane. You're doing a good job. Well, you're a Little Brother, and we're not going to hire you from Little Brother. So I think that's just what their mentality is, and it's sad because I think he really deserves to be in this conversation. But I would shock me actually if he does end up the job. Alex Golish could be a guy they look at just because of what he's doing at South Florida. So those are Cameron's options right there. We have a couple more comments, so we want to try to go there. Okay. Talk about Joe Brady. So I know Broderick talked about Joe Brady. Joe Brady will be awesome, because he knows what it's like to coach here. He was part of that 19 national championship team. He's always been a fan favorite. I still think Steve Ensminger doesn't give him enough credit, though, for actually being the offensive coordinator and calling plays. I think Joe Brady took it a step further and gave LSU a lot of the concepts, designs, and Steve Ensminger can take it a step further. He does deserve credit for LSU in 2019, but I still don't think that Steve Ensminger gets enough credit for what that offense did that year of actually calling the plays and putting that all together with Joe Burrow and that offense. Joe Brady. So the thing about Joe Brady when he left LSU, the reason why he was there so shortly, because he did not want to recruit. He wanted to be an NFL coach. He wanted to be an NFL head coach, and he did not want to recruit. But you have a better shot now than you did a couple years ago at getting Joe Brady because the college model, the college concepts now is like the NFL. The college model is the NFL model. When playing and paying players, you don't really have to go and be Mr. Personality and recruit the players just off of personality. Just open the checkbook, say how much you want. That, as sad as it is now, that is the nature of college football now. So if you are Joe Brady, you can be the head coach at LSU and still kind of treat it like the NFL, just because that's what college football is now. That's why Joe Brady is not out of the running. Still of a wild card though. I think maybe too green of a head coach, because he hasn't been a head coach. He's been an offensive coordinator. He's called plays, but that is a gamble. There's somebody like on the defensive side of football as a coordinator to become a head coach candidate as well. I'll talk about him too. But Joe Brady understands Louisiana. He understands LSU being here and being a part of that. But maybe too green, maybe of a head coach. Not having a head coaching experience, because that is a big job for your first head coaching opportunity. What about going get one of these great Louisiana high school coaches? So I'm assuming, Miss Melissa, you're talking about maybe like a JT Curtis or Bryce Brown. Bryce Brown is interesting. I wouldn't say necessarily go from Edna Carr's head football coach to LSU's head football coach. But maybe having some of these guys on your staff is a great decision, right? Especially with Bryce Brown. You know how much of an advantage that can be, especially in New Orleans in recruiting, and having a guy like Bryce Brown be like on your staff. And you have some of those New Orleans connections already. I mean, obviously you have Frank Wilson, and Frank Wilson's like a godfather recruiting there in the New Orleans area. But man, how great would that be in recruiting to have a guy like Bryce Brown be your head coach after all the success he's had at the car? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great high school coaches out there in Louisiana, but that is a big step up, Miss Melissa, to go from no matter if you're at even Catholic High or St. Thomas More, West Monroe, like you're talking about like a powerhouse in Louisiana, a big program, Zachary, one of those type of schools, type of programs, to go from that to LSU is a massive jump. But I am in favor of that, to bring him on for whoever the new head coach is. I'm in favor for whoever the head coach is to bring along more, Louisiana high school football coaches, Louisiana area-based coaches that know the state of Louisiana, know the recruiting base, know what to look at. Bring those coaches aboard. I'm all in favor of that. But as far as head coach at LSU, that is different. Jay Tucker Rafferty, appreciate Jay for tuning in, and Jay chiming in. If you heard the governor today, it sounds like they're going to go cheap. Yep. As you can tell, Jeff Landry talked today, and it looks like that they are going cheap. He made the announcement that Scott Woodward's not going to be part of the next be part of the process and hiring the next football coach, which doesn't shock me at all when he made that announcement, just because of how much money Scott Woodward offered for the next coach, whether it was Brian Kelly at LSU, Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M. That is a lot of money. Even to bring on, and those two guys didn't work out, but even if they did, that's a big risk, a whole lot of money. And you can tell if you give somebody that much money, they might just be a little bit lazy and lackadaisical, I think you saw that with both of those cases at Texas A&M, at LSU. And you saw the results being there. So I get the governor being involved, and I know people say, well, is he running LSU or is he running the state of Louisiana? Well, we'll talk about that a little later, but I do get his reasoning by being involved and trying a different process and making sure not to throw out so much money. That way, year in, year out, let's say the next hire, you go out and get a big fish and you offer him $100 million contract too, and he doesn't work out, and give him another 10-year contract, and you're in the same situation again. Like, you just can't keep doing that. So I do agree with the governor getting more involved with the decision-making. And, I mean, he's already kind of involved with that already, because LSU is still trying to find a president. He already put together the board of supervisors here, and they're going to pick a president. The president's going to pick the AD, and so forth. But That's what's crazy about this whole coaching search is that you don't really know not only who the head coach is going to be moving forward, but you don't know who the person is going to be that's going to actually make the decision for the head coach. So there's a lot to unpack here when you're talking about this job search and what they're going to really look at. All right, Broderick, no pressure at Ole Miss. LSU is a different animal. Yep, that's what I talked about with Lane Kiffin. He's got no pressure. He can win as much as he wants at Ole Miss. No pressure. What Ole Miss is loving. They can right now they can build a statue of Lane Kiffin for what he's doing right now. And to make the college football playoff, I think he's in a position where if he has a team that can really make it far, let's say he makes it to the quarterfinal. I think that's what Jay is about to talk about. If he gets knocked out in this first round, he may think it's as far as he can bring them. Yeah, that's a good point, Jay. And I think that is a good point. Now, if he brings Ole Miss to the quarters, or let's say he brings them second, third round, semifinals, around that, right? Let's say he brings them to that. He's not taking the LSU job because look what he's doing right now with Trinidad Chambliss, a Division II quarterback that transferred to here, and they make like second, third round of the playoff. Like he thinks that man, they're this close. He can be an absolute legend of bringing Ole Miss a national championship. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility, Jay. I mean, you kind of look at it. Look who's in the college football playoff discussion right now. You have Indiana, you have Vanderbilt, you have Georgia Tech. You have a lot of those teams in the running right now for the college football playoff. So it's not out of realm of possibility. They've probably been back in the old era, right? That Ole Miss would, not in a million years, Ole Miss would be in the picture for a national championship. But now they are in it because some of these other teams, Georgia Tech, Indiana, I mean, Texas A&M right now is number 3 team in the country. Texas A&M hasn't won a national championship, maybe since like the 30s or something like that. They won one. But they're right in it. They can win a national championship. So it's wide open in college football. Anybody can win. There's not going to be a Nick Saban, Alabama dynasty. There's not a 2019 LSU team. There's not the Georgia teams with Kirby. You don't have that. You're not going to have that team that's just head and shoulders above everybody else in college football. And that is one positive. When you look at NIL, the transfer portal, it's an even playing field for everybody. All right, Jared. Thanks so much to Jared for chiming in as well. Really appreciate you, Jared, and I appreciate everybody that's tuning in. Really appreciate all the comments, guys. Keep them coming. Really want to interact with y'all guys, so I really appreciate it. So Jarrett Weber wants to know: do you think Blake Baker or Corey Raymond makes the cut with new head coach? Good question, Jarrett. I think there's a couple of key guys you have to retain, and if these are the 3 guys. Really 4 guys that really won't. You have to retain Frank Wilson. I mean, because he's in the interim head coach right now. And he's the one talking to recruits, reassuring recruits, managing the ship, right? So, and he obviously has a love for LSU. Those LSU guys you have to keep because that is what I talked about early in the show that led to the downfall for Brian Kelly. What led to the downfall of Brian Kelly, he did not retain those people that bleed purple and gold and bleed LSU, like Corey Raymond at first, like Tommy Moffitt. Those guys, those mistakes, you have to keep those guys on staff, and he did not. Blake Baker. Now, here's the situation with Blake Baker. One of those head coaching guys that I could see getting the head coaching job at LSU is Eli Drinkwitz. The reason why Eli Drinkwitz is because of Blake Baker. Reuniting both those guys, and if that is the case, Blake Baker is definitely keeping his job because Blake Baker was Eli Drinkwitz's defensive coordinator at Missouri. They both achieved a lot of success together, and that's why I think Eli Drinkwitz gets a foot in the door at LSU because of Blake Baker. And regardless, I think Blake Baker is going to be somebody that they're going to be considered keeping as a defensive coordinator now, especially for Eli Drinkwitz. If it's somebody else, I'm not really sure about Blake Baker because they might want to bring their own defensive coordinator in. They might have their own scheme with their own guy and bring along with them. So Blake Baker is a little bit of a wild card for me, depending on who comes in. I want them to retain Blake Baker. I think he's done a great job with the LSU defense, and I think he's a great young personality to have. But, yeah. I think they keep him. Corey Raymond, definitely. You definitely have to keep him. You definitely have to keep Corey Raymond. Blake Baker's kind of a wild card just because of depending on who comes in. Corey Raymond, you have to keep. And I feel like whoever comes in, they need to say that's what Brian Kelly did wrong, was get rid of him. Now, he brought him back. He rectified his mistake. And I do give credit for Brian Kelly to trying to, they're trying to get him back. So he did try and get him back, but it was kind of too little, too late at that point, right? But if you are the head coach, you do whatever it takes to keep your core Louisiana, LSU, purple and gold guys on staff. And those guys are Corey Raymond, Frank Wilson. I mean, Kyle Williams, your defensive line coach. He hasn't been there as long as the other guys, but former LSU guy, former LSU player. And, keeping a guy like that on staff. Your defensive coaches, it's much easier to keep them on board, right? Now your offensive coaches, Brad Davis is gone. You have, Cortez Hankton. I can see him leaving too. That's kind of an up in the air one as well. But I think you find some of the core Louisiana guys. You have to keep them on your staff. Jay Tucker, you hit one on the head. Whoever the coach is, find a way to get Moffitt home ASAP. Yeah, Tommy Moffitt loves LSU, man. He spent over 20 years at LSU. Now, understand what Tommy feels like. You spend so much time to one place, to one university, and he's coached a lot of great players, and he's been a driving force of why LSU's been so great for over 20 years. And you have to retain them. You have to keep them on board. But Brian Kelly had his own guy, wanted to bring his own guy in. And that was ultimately, even though that's one of his first mistakes, it ultimately was the last mistake because that first mistake bit him in the end when Texas A&M played against him. So at the same time, though, I think it also rejuvenated Tommy Moffitt a little bit, to get revenge on LSU. But still, that was a big miss to not bring Tommy on staff. And I'm not sure what it's going to cost because I'm sure Mike Elko was the first person to say why, being the press conference after the game, he was one of the first things he said, the reason they won this football game, the reason why Texas A&M has been so dominant over LSU in the second half is because of Tommy Moffitt. And you just never really thought, going into this game, how much Tommy meant to the players. But not only LSU, but Texas A&M, because the Texas A&M players, they felt disrespected and they wanted to bring it to LSU, and they did at home in Tiger Stadium at night. And I'm happy that Tommy got his revenge for him personally, because Tommy is a great guy, and got a chance to talk to him one or two times, and this is a great coach, great stream coach. If you can't find a way, Jay, to bring Tommy back on, you have to find somebody in that coaching tree, in that Tommy Moffitt tree. You have to bring him on board, because it's like bringing like a Lane Kiffin or a Kirby Smart under the Nick Saban coaching tree, right? It's the same thing here. You go and try to find somebody that knows Tommy Moffitt, has worked under Tommy Moffitt, has kind of learned his ways, his techniques, what he brings, the type of physicality, the demanding nature that Tommy wants from his players. You bring him here to LSU. So whether you get Tommy Moffitt or just somebody that is in that tree that knows exactly the type of strength coach he is, that's the type of guy you bring at LSU. So, guys, these are great comments, great questions. Keep it going. I'll spend a couple more minutes with y'all guys. But the question is, and you can answer, I want y'all to chime in. Who do you think the next LSU head football coach should be? If you were the AD, if you were, let's say, Governor Landry, everybody that's, let's say you're talking to Governor Landry right now, you're on the board of supervisors. Who do you want as your next head football coach at LSU? We want you to chime in. We got a couple of comments already. We've had Lane Kiffin being brought up. We've had Joe Brady being brought up on the show today. We've also had John Sumrall bring up. Let's see who else comment. Alex Golis from South Florida. And then Jay Tucker says Sumrall or Frank. And here's another thing. Frank Wilson is in the conversation as well. That is not out of the realm of possibility because I think, let's see, Melissa commented about being cheap, by going cheap, or I think it was you, Jay. I think you commented about going cheap, but you want to go cheap? Give the job to Frank Wilson because he loves LSU. You cut him open, he's purple and gold. This is a dream. This is a dream job. It's kind of like the same thing with Ed Orgeron, right? And I think the only thing Frank is seriously considered as the head coach at LSU, because the money aspect is really nice. I think another thing with Frank is, yeah, that's what Jay Tucker. Okay. So the governor opened that door today, especially the wanting to pay bonuses. Yeah, right. And that's a good way you should do it. We'll talk about the contracts and how coaches should be paid really from now on. But Frank Wilson, if he goes and wins, let's say you go out and beat Alabama. You go beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa after the bye week. You win out. You beat Arkansas. You beat Western Kentucky. And you beat Oklahoma. You go 4-0. You salvage the season. You're definitely going to be considered for the head coach at LSU because the players going to want to play for him. That is a check mark. Like, hey, the players are all in. They want to play for him. Kind of like the players want to play for Coach O. And Coach O salvaged the season, and they won a lot of games winning out in that 2016 year. And then he took over as a head coach in 2017. But if he wins out, he's got a great shot. I think Frank's got a great shot to being a head coach. But I think he needs to at least go 3-1. Frank needs at least to go 3-1 in his 4-game stretch. If he goes 3-1, let's say they barely lose on the road to Alabama, and it's a great game. I think he's still going to be considered just because he knows LSU. Now, you look over his overall win-loss record at UTSA, McNeese. It's underwhelming, but hey, so was Ed Orgeron, right? When he was head coach at Ole Miss. But you need somebody that believes purple and gold, that can relate to everybody in Louisiana, that knows what the job LSU means. Frank Wilson is that guy. So that is a great option. Sumrall as well. I like Sumrall. I hope Sumrall is seriously considered for the head coach at LSU. I'm not sure if the powers that be are going to take seriously John Sumrall in the conversation because it's an ego thing in LSU. Is that, hey, we're not going to look at how well you're doing over there at Tulane. You are at little brother Tulane. You're at little brother ULL. Like, we're not going to hire the coach from Tulane or hire the coach from ULL. And I hope they don't think that way. And I hope that Sumrall is really considered. Another guy I want to throw out, and it's kind of like the defensive version of Joe Brady. But A wild card here. Now, there are some risk with this hire, but I like the upside with this hire. If they seriously consider Kelvin Shepherd, the reason why I bring Kelvin Shepherd's name out, because he was a great Tiger. He was a great linebacker at LSU in the Les Miles days. And Kelvin Shepherd, he's a defensive coordinator right now at the Detroit Lions. And the Detroit Lions are playing some great defense right now. And right now, Kelvin Shepherd is being considered for some NFL head coaching opportunities. He also plays or coaches under Dan Campbell. And LSU just needs toughness, physicality, and even though he's a young guy, he played linebacker. He is going to bring tough-nosed, hard-nosed football back to LSU. And that's why I like Kelvin Shepherd. Now, the tricky thing is he doesn't have any head coaching experience. And I think that's what's going to probably, with LSU, they're not going to like that because he's going to be a little bit of a risk because this is a big job to be the head coach at LSU as your first head coaching job. But I like the other check marks with Kelvin Shepherd. He's a young coach. He's hungry. His dream job is at LSU, so you want to be able to pay him a whole lot of money to go to LSU. And I think he's hungry. He's motivated. He loves Louisiana. He played at LSU. He's going to relate to the fans. And I think he is the type of guy that players will play for. So he is a player to kind of watch out for. Is he seriously in the conversation? I'm not really sure. I probably not, just because he hasn't done it as a head coach yet. And that's probably what's going to take him out the running in this LSU head coaching search. I like a guy like, I tell you who I like, and I don't think a lot of people have been throwing his name out there, but Kenny Dillingham at Arizona State. I really like Kenny Dillingham. For starters, he's a young coach, one of the youngest in college football. He's already experienced success at Arizona State. I mean, they almost beat Texas in the college football playoff last year. And he's got a great personality. He can relate to players, and I think players are going to want to play for him. And he's already achieved some success as a young head coach. He's young. He's motivated. And I think that's the type of guy that you're going to have to bring on board. There's other candidates out there, that I like. Alex Golish, what he's doing over there at South Florida. Is he not friends with Jay Johnson as well? Yeah, I believe so. I believe he is friends with because he was at Arizona State. Jay Johnson was at Arizona, but he's got that West Coast type of relationships as well. I mean, I like Kenny Dillingham. I don't think they've really thrown his name out as much, but I've liked him as a coach. I'll be honest with you. So I think you need a kind of a young, rising head coach to take the job. I love Dan Lanning, but I think Dan Lanning's not going to be an option, a reasonable option, just because of, why would he leave Oregon right now with what he's building right now with the Oregon Ducks? And the Nike money, Phil Knight is over at Nike. He's going to do whatever it takes. Yeah, he's going to do whatever it takes to keep him. Drink could be the sleeper here. Yeah, I think so. Just because he's coaching the SEC. He knows what it's like to coach in the SEC, the Southeastern Conference. And he's been successful coaching in the Southeastern Conference. And Blake Baker. Blake Baker is a big key piece here because he was his defensive coordinator at Missouri. And I think that is, be honest with you, if I'm LSU, that is the one that makes the most sense to me. Just looking at their side of things for a couple of different reasons. I don't think he's going to cost as much as he's not going to cost as much as Lane Kiffin. He's not going to cost as much as Nick Saban, the Nick Saban rumors and all that, to entertain. Dan Lanning, he's not going to cost as much as Dan Lanning. He's got SEC coaching experience, so he's not, and he knows what it's like to coach in the SEC, recruit in the SEC. play against other SEC teams. And he's got that relationship with Blake Baker. He can come over here, keep Blake Baker kind of in house, and keep everything in house. He's got a great personality. I think he's kind of a fun interview. You notice that on the sidelines with him. So he could be the biggest sleeper for me, Eli Drinkwitz. But that one shot me. I like Coach Key at Georgia Tech. He's maybe not the most in terms of media friendly coach. But what I do like about Coach Key, what you're going to get from him. They're going to be tough. They're going to be physical. They're going to bring that style of football back to LSU, and that's something you have to consider. What do you think about LSU coaches? I mean, LSU brand, right? Tough, physical, smash mouth. And you've lost that over the last years of Brian Kelly. So bringing that back is going to be a key here. So I think those are going to be some of the guys to really kind of keep an eye out on for LSU. I'll have an article on our website, gridironfootballusa.com. I'll go and dive deeper into some of the coaching candidates that I think LSU should take a look at, take a chance on, and I give my thoughts on who are the top candidates can be. We kind of already went over a lot of them. Lane Kiffin, John Summerall, Joe Brady, Eli Drinkwitz, Brent Key. I mean, Clark Lee could be in the conversation as well, what he's doing over there at Vanderbilt. But does he want to be at he's a Vanderbilt guy. He has been a Vanderbilt guy. And he's played there. He's an alum there. He's trying to build something there. So I don't think Clark Lee is going to be an option. Marcus Freeman, I've heard Marcus Freeman's name being brought out. I'm not sure if LSU is going to go that route again. Again, another Notre Dame coach to try and get another Notre Dame coach over here too. But those are just some of the names being thrown out. I know Nick Saban's name's being thrown out, but it'll be it'll be a cool story if Nick Saban comes back. You know how cool that would be for college football if Nick Saban comes back to coaching. Maybe it's like a 3 or 4 year deal. It's like, hey, finish what you started building here at LSU, bring him back. But I think he's truly happy what he's doing at College Game Day. And with the NIL era, if this was a different era, I think he would truly consider coming back and coaching college football. But just the NIL and managing all that, I don't think he wants to get back into it. So I think he's pretty satisfied with what he's doing. All right, Jay Tucker, is it true the last 2 days of practice have been very physical? Well, I can tell you one thing about the last 2 days of practice under Frank Wilson. They've been pretty energized. And that's what kind of happens when you have an interim coach. It's a change of pace. It's something that you can be really motivated, right? It's just a fresh start. It's a little bit of an energy drink, for the team, right? When you get some change, you're not used to the same old. Sometimes change is good. Sometimes change is not so great. But I think change is going to be good as far as the interim coach and as far as the rest of the season. I think this will be really good for LSU. You saw how it was. You just watch the game. Just watch the Texas A&M game. Just look at the interactions on the sideline. I think Frank Wilson's going to do a great job in navigating the ship. So basically the practice days, just in case if y'all wondering how that works, is during the off season, the media. So during spring training, during fall camp, we have access to practice. And Brian Kelly, gave us a lot of access to spring camp, to fall camp, and we got to see a whole lot. But during the season, they actually close practice for the media. But yeah, I think it's a change of pace. I'll be honest with you. I've heard from other media guys that when they went past the practice facility, You heard a lot of loud music. You heard players hooting and hollering, like a lot of energy at practice. I'm not sure how physical practices can be, especially in the bye week. You kind of want to recover. You got Alabama. You got to get ready for that last stretch of games, the 4-game stretch at the end of the season. But I can tell it's it's an energized practice. What I also heard what Frank Wilson did was bring a lot of former players back to LSU to go watch them practice. I think that's awesome. And that has to be something all the time. You have to continue to bring former players back into your facility because you want the former players to be on your side. So I think Frank Wilson did a great job of doing that, bringing the former players back and letting them watch practice and being a part of it because they were part of that culture, that winning championship culture, and you want that to pass down to the current players. So I'm all in favor for that. So I'm glad that Frank did that. It looked like the coaches have had enough as well. Yeah, that's why I kind of went and talked about it, right? You saw just the frustration on the sidelines. You saw Brian Kelly yelling at Joe Sloan. You saw Brian Kelly yelling at the special teams coach. And here's the thing with that, right? You can yell at the assistant coaches as much as you can, as much as you want. But the thing about that is you are the head coach. So talk about game planning, preparing for games. It's all on you. You're the one that conducts that, right? So, and if you're Brian Kelly, we talk about Joe Sloan. Kelly even yelled at the water boy. I truly believe that. But if you had the veto power, right, for Brian Kelly, if you remember what I'm talking about, this happened right before halftime. This was LSU, and that's crazy. LSU was winning that game 18-14. But this was right before halftime. And LSU was driving. They had no timeouts left. They just burned the timeout, their third and final timeout. And when Garrett Nussmeier threw, it was the 3rd and 8, I think. And there's only about 20 seconds left until halftime. No timeouts. It just burned the timeout. And you had Garrett Nussmeier throw underneath to Aaron Anderson inbounds. And a couple of things here, right? He catches that pass in bounds with no timeouts. It's 3rd down. You're in trouble because you can't spike the ball. You're going to have to go and rush your field goal team out there and to try to get a kickoff. Fortunate thing, the pass was incomplete. The clock wasn't running. And then Brian Kelly was yelling at Joe Sloan. You can read the lips like you can't call that play, that blanking play. You're reading his lips on 4th down. But you just called a timeout. So you should have known what the play was because you're involved with the timeout. You called timeout. You heard Joe Sloan call the play. So if you did not like what that play was, why didn't you get involved and change the play if you have the veto power, right? If you're the head coach, you'd say, hey, I don't like the play, change the play or run this, So was he not aware that's the play Joe Sloan called? I don't know. But that was a bad play call because in that situation, you want to throw it in the end zone. You want to throw it towards the middle of the field because if you get the 1st down, you can at least it'll move the chains, clock stop. You can go and spike the ball, But that was the worst play to the sideline right before halftime. That's the worst place you can throw the football to in that situation. So, yeah, that's the play you can tell you had no clue what was going on. Yeah, exactly. That defines it, right? Because if you're in that situation, you're coming off a timeout. You should know what the play is. I mean, Brian Kelly's an offensive coach. He did say in the press conference, like I think going into that game or leading in, you saw him with a play sheet with like the last 2 weeks that he would have been more involved with the play calling, or at least just not calling the plays necessarily, but just being more involved. And if there was something he didn't like, he was like, "Hey, I don't like this play. You're in a timeout." So Brian Kelly, you can hear what Joe Sloan's trying to talk to Garen Nussmeier what play you want. So you could have said, "Oh, I don't like that play. Like you're trying to do something to the sidelines. Let's get something else. Let's call a different play." So yeah, it looked like he was totally unaware of that, and that's why I kind of went back to earlier. If you're an LSU coach, if you're the head coach at LSU, you have to be all in. You have to be all in on LSU. You can't take anything off. You have to be a total buy-in. You have to be all in on the job. And stuff like that, not knowing your assistant coaches, not knowing really your team. Brian Kelly said a couple of times, this is the best roster he's ever had at LSU. That last year, we're taking receipts. We'll see you at the national championship. The other coaches never said anything like that. And that's the worst thing you can do as a head coach, because if you say something like that and it does not work out, guess what? They're going to point at you. It's like, wait a minute, I thought you said this was the best team you've ever had. I thought you said this was a $20 million roster. Why is this, if it's the players, you got the best players you ever had, and they're underperforming, that can mean only one thing. That can mean it's the coach. And so, unfortunately, that's where the situation really goes. The board of supervisors seem to be 50-50, so choosing next coach is going to be interesting. Yes. Yeah. I mean, the board of supervisors is 50-50. I have no idea. Is a new board of supervisors are trying to hire a president right now, and you don't know what the AD situation is. So it's just crazy knowing, like, first of all, where do you go with this? Like, who's going to make the actual change at head coach? Is it Jeff Landry? By just naming the supervisors, the board of supervisors. Is it going to be the new AD? We all know it's not Scott Woodward, according to Jeff Landry and the comments he made, but it's not going to be, according to the governor, it's not going to be Scott Woodward. So you got to figure out who's actually making the search at head coach. Nonetheless, trying to find a new head coach after that. So this whole coaching search is going to be more interesting than it's ever been. And to be honest with you, I'm not really sure. Oh, what's up, Trevor? What's going on, my man? Hope you're doing good, buddy. Former Catholic High classmate of mine back in 2016. Go Bears. So let's see what Trevor has to say. If he had any accountability, I would have to let him finish the season. Yeah, that's a good point. It would have been one of those things like, remember what Coach O, right? Right, Trevor? They made that decision on Ed Orgeron, like, I believe the Kentucky game after they lost on the road to Kentucky. They said, hey, this was going to be the end for Coach O. Yeah, go Bears. You got it right, Trevor. Go Bears. Gotta love those Bears. Now, obviously, I cover a lot of them. I've called games VSN, and the car game last year, and obviously covered a lot of them for Gridiron Football. But going back to the point, yeah, you gave Coach O the benefit of the doubt because he showed that he can win a national championship, and at least you can kind of manage things at the end. They made that change after the Kentucky game. Was like, hey, Coach, we're going to let you finish out the season. And they ended up sneaking up and winning a couple of games there at the very end of that 2021 year, that Florida game. That was when TDP went off, Texas A&M. So they won some games at the end to make it interesting. And that's the point. Brian Kelly, I don't think Coach O really lost the team. When you lose, and, he always kind of has the support of the fan base too, being a Louisiana guy. So it wasn't like everybody was calling his head, and it was like, and nobody was leaving the stadium, that kind of deal. But Brian Kelly lost. I think he lost everybody. Whether it was at some point, whether it was the Vanderbilt game, whether it was the second half of this game, anything that he had left all fell apart in the second half of the Texas A&M game. The team totally fell apart. When you're at home at night against Texas A&M, an arch rival, and the fans leave like all the fans leave by the third quarter, and the ones that stayed were calling for your head. I don't see how you can let this carry on the rest of the way. And I knew there were going to be changes. It was a good time to do that. It came at a perfect time to do something because you had the bye week coming up. So was it firing Brian Kelly or was it firing Joe Sloan? Was it firing Brad Davis? Was it making changes there? And I'm sure that's what Brian Kelly was going to say. Is like, hey, I'll make some changes. But I think he got enough he made enough coaching changes, enough assistant coaching hires got wrong for him to say, hey, you've had the benefit of the doubt. You've tried to bring your guys in. It did not work. So you saw it there. And I think he lost pretty much any accountability he had towards the end. And that's why he didn't finish the season. LSU, the board of supervisors, they saw enough. The head honchos saw enough. They wanted to move on. It was time to move on. And that is what happened there. LSU decided to move on. They had enough of Brian Kelly, and it was time to make changes. This was an all-in type of year for Brian Kelly, a prove-it type of year. And I think what really hurts Brian Kelly in this instance, Trevor, is he didn't really have a guy that really went out and batted for him. I talked about it earlier, Les Miles got carried off the field against Texas A&M. The team still loved him. And that allowed him the opportunity to coach that next year. But Brian Kelly never had that guy to went out and vouch for him. And when you don't in this situation, it makes it kind of easy to fire you. Jay Tucker again. You could tell Sloan was in over his head, knowing the O-line is struggling. You never move the pocket, change the launch point, nothing to protect Nuss. Yeah, you can be – we've seen examples of this, Jay. You can be a great coordinator and not be a good head coach. You can be a great position coach and not be a great coordinator. I mean, look at the Saints, right? Look at Dennis Allen. Dennis Allen was a fantastic defensive coordinator, a great defensive coordinator. He just was not a head coach. Same thing here with Joe Sloan. I think Joe Sloan was a really good quarterback coach. Joe Sloan was here. Jaden Daniels, he was here for the second year for Jaden Daniels in 2023. And he helped him. I give Joe Sloan a lot of credit. He helped Jaden Daniels win the Heisman Trophy. Was a big reason for it. And I think he's a great quarterback position coach. But he's not a good offensive coordinator. And you saw the last 2 years. And, in fact, it got worse this year than it did last year. Now, it can be a multiple different things you talked about. The play calling was not good. My biggest pet peeve with Joe Sloan was all the outside throws. I thought LSU could have attacked the middle of the field in their passing game a lot more. They never really did. In fact, try to attack past the line of scrimmage even more. But too many screen passes at the outside, too many RPO type of stuff, right? When you throw in a screen 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage, it was way too much of that stuff. It would be 3rd down and 10. You would throw a 2-yard flat route, and the defense was coming to make the tackle. It was underwhelming. It was very conservative. They weren't attacking the football down the field. I'm not sure that had to deal with Nussmeier's injury as much, but you made a lot of long throws. I mean, a lot of 2-3 yard hitches to the opposite sideline you would throw, really long throws for 3 yards, 2-3 yards. They never attacked the middle of the field in the passing game. And because when they were able to hit those slants and those stuff up the middle, use the receivers in the slot a lot more, they never really did that with Joe Sloan. And, the offense was predictable, especially in the running game as well. The offensive line, that, my friend, I knew that was going to be a rough year a long time ago on the offensive line because consistently in fall practice, going there through the spring, going there through the fall, I knew the weakest link on this whole LSU football team was the offensive line. So I'm not surprised that the offensive line has struggled the way it's been. I am surprised by the regression of Garrett Nussmeier this year. Now, at this point for Garrett, at first it was the injuries. I think now it's just like his confidence. When you're getting hit every play, you have to pick yourself up after every single play getting hit. When you know in your mind that your offensive line is not really good and you can't really run, and you obviously don't have the same velocity on the throws that you've shown. Like you've got a defeated quarterback right now in Garrett Nussmeier. This isn't the same Garrett Nussmeier we saw last year when he threw for 4,000 yards, was a gunslinger. You haven't seen the same zip on his throws. You can kind of see the disappointment he's had on the sidelines as well. So, yeah, I mean, it was just – I think he was a little bit of a combination of a lot of wrongs, right? Joe Sloan, like you mentioned, you're right on the head on that. He was a little bit over his head. You've had the offensive line struggling this year. And Nussmeier, yeah, he just was not – he hasn't been a comfortable quarterback. Is it time for a change? I'm going to go into that a little bit more as we talk about the bye week. But there's been just a lot of different things going wrong for LSU offensively. It's really been a nightmare. I think defensively, this defense was bought in early in the season. But when you see your offense go 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, time and time again, at some point of your defense, you're going to cave in. Because you're just tired of seeing the offense fail and fail. Because you can go in and say, what difference does it make? We get a stop, our offense isn't going to do anything. So you see the offense has been a huge reason this year why the season's going the way it's had. He did nothing to address any issues, just kept pretending like they're not there. Yeah, and that's another thing too, right? He never made any changes as far as like in-game adjustments or any changes or made a position move here. And either he kept pretending like they're not there or he didn't really take accountability for the mistakes. And that's at that point, man. Like if you knew that your job was on the line, you would be making those changes. I think you would be making changes. If you knew your job was on the line and you were worried about your job being on the line, you would be making some changes. I mean, but Brian Kelly never made those changes. And you saw that, right? I mean, you saw that throughout the whole season. He did really nothing to address the issues there in the running game or with Nussmeier, with him being injured, or trying to get Michael Van Buren some reps. None of those changes. And you saw why that LSU was tired of it. You know, Broderick, I had to turn the game off. It was hard to watch, man. BK had gotten too lazy and wasn't aware of anything that was going on offensively or period. Joe Sloan was clueless with no help from BK. Yeah, it was a hard game to watch. Well, Broderick, you had the choice of turning the game off and just watching something else. Unfortunately, I did not have that same choice. I was in Tiger Stadium, and I had to watch the whole thing. So it was bad, as bad as I can ever remember it. Probably even more worse this year than the Bama game, just because you had somewhat of an excuse with the weather. And you knew it was kind of a transition year. This was worse because you knew it was the end, and you knew the atmosphere was not exactly what it was going to be like towards the end of that football game. Joe Sloan, it was too much. That it was way over his head, calling plays and being the offensive coordinator at LSU. He was way over his head at this job, and that was just one of the downfalls. That was one of the mistakes Brian Kelly made. You know, instead of trying to get a veteran offensive coordinator or somebody that's had experience, calling plays in the SEC, he went with a guy to take a chance on, and it just never helped. And Brian Kelly, right? I mean, what were some of the things you saw, right, with Brian Kelly? What were his specialties when he got the job at LSU? What did you know him for from Notre Dame? And it was two positions. It was the offensive line and the tight ends. Now the tight ends, you've been able to work that. Mason Taylor, you're working to trade as Green right now, but the offensive line has been underwhelming. Even when they had guys like Will Campbell, Emory Jones, they underachieved on the ball last year. So yeah, those position groups just never. You got softer really as an offensive line, and those are your priorities. Really, what's your baby? Are you an offensive coach or a defensive coach? Brian Kelly's an offensive coach. And even though it worked for you early on with Jane Daniels, it just has not worked with Garrett Nussmeier in year two. And yeah, Brian Kelly, that interaction showed it all, right? In the Texas A&M game, calling out Joe Sloan like, hey, you can't call that play on third down. Well, if you're Brian Kelly, you could have done a better job of telling them like, hey, this wasn't a good play to call. Like, try something different. We want to attack the middle of the field. What do you have here? You want to attack the middle of the field. So, you could have worked with Joe Sloan a little bit more. I was like, go Bears. That's right, Trevor. We're addressing that again. Go Bears for sure. Back to Jay. Appreciate everybody that's commenting here. We'll go and talk until about 7 o'clock. Do you think the money guys may have – wait. Do you think the money guys may have their guy already, possibly made calls? Kevin, money is not important. Governor, we're going to do a contract with incentives. And I think that's what – as far as the incentives part, that's what contracts should be for college football coaches. If you're going to give a coach a $100 million contract, they're pretty much already satisfied at that point. Like they have nothing to lose. If you give somebody that incentive, like, hey, we're only going to pay you $5 million. We want to pay you $5 million a year, no matter what. You get $5 million no matter what. But we'll pay you an extra $1 million after every game you play or every game you win. We'll give you this much money if you win the SEC championship. We'll give you this much money at the end of it for making the college football playoff. We'll get you this much money to win the national championship. If you add that on top, like, hey, it's going to be up to you how much money you want to make at LSU. Because if you're making a lot of money, we're fine with you paying the money. But you have to go and win us games. You're going to have to make us in the consistent conversation for a national championship. You're going to have to keep us in the conversation for a national championship. So what you're going to do, I think incentives is the best way to do it. Give them a base, and then you can build it up based on how you performed at that point. And I wouldn't give anybody more than 4 years. And I think at this point in college football, with the expanded college football playoff, with the NIL, the transfer portal, you can build a team in 2 years. Look at Indiana. Look at who else is it? Look at Texas A&M. Look at what Mike Elko and them are doing right now. You can build a team in 2 years. So it's much easier now than trying to wait 4 years and see what you can do in 4 years. But I would give everybody 4 years to prove that you can win, especially at a school like this. But giving somebody a 10-year contract, that is totally unbelievable right there. And I know you have some other questions here. Let's see. Here's a case. I mean, there's always going to be some big boosters, and there's always going to be some money thrown around. There's a private donor already that's already paying for Brian Kelly's buyout. They may have their guy already. I know that the agents, whether it's Jimmy Sexton or Trace Armstrong and these big hotshot agents, or probably on the phone with a lot of these board of supervisors talking about some money, throwing around money. Basically, probably right now, probably throwing on interest, like who's actually interested in the LSU head coaching job. But I don't see LSU actually making a change or an announcement probably until around Christmas time, maybe a little bit before that. It's kind of different when you got the college football playoff, and then probably a lot of your candidates that you got that are in the running for the job are going to be busy in the college football playoff. So that's going to be something we'll probably see flowing around that first round of the college football playoff season as far as who the head coach may be at LSU. But they're going to try to get the ball rolling. It's just kind of tough to do that when you got coaches that are preparing for a college football playoff, a national championship hunt, and you're trying to figure out, okay, who's actually going to be making the decisions on who the head coach is going to be at LSU. So you got that to kind of work around as well. Like you mentioned, Lane Kiffin even said that money is not the biggest thing for him. So it might not be as expensive as you think, but money's still going to be a thing you have to throw out. You're going to still have to pay him a lot. But that is not the one thing Lane Kiffin wants when talking to him. After the game, when he said, "We can run the ball," did you see the last play of the game? We never ran that play. He referenced ever again. That's true. And he said, not, and I disagree with him a lot, especially that point he made. I agree with him about getting mad. He deserves to get mad because of the winning a tough game. Your defense had 5 interceptions. If that would have been maybe the third or fourth question, Trevor, I don't think he gets mad as he did. But since that was the first question that was brought up about the offense and the third downs and not being able to run the football, yeah, like not running the ball and averaging a yard or 2 per carry every single play, and then all of a sudden breaking one loose at the end of the game for a 50-yard run is not, oh, we can run the ball. You see the play at the end of the game. Like, no, you can't run the ball because you haven't done it on a consistent basis. And that's something we've seen in fall practice. Like, Cam Durham will get balled up 1 yard. Then we get balled up again 2 yards. Balled up again another yard. And then, boom, he would break 178 yards for a touchdown. We saw that a lot during fall camp. But, yeah, I thought the thing is, though, Trevor, they could have ran that play a little bit more. And I think they tried going under center. They tried going I formation in the goal line, but you saw how that was a disaster in the South Carolina game at the end. But it's hard to continue to run that, even though it worked one time. It's just you haven't worked on it all fall camp long. If LSU – when they with Les, they go in the I formation, they do the toss dive. That is something that you not only have to practice, you have to live it. If you go I formation, run the football, you're going to have to do that. You have to live it. You don't wake up all of a sudden and say, "Hey, I'm going to be physical. I'm going to be a physical football team. I'm going to run the football," even though you're a finesse football team, and just hey, we won't be able to run the football now. Like, it's a commitment to it, and that's the thing. And we haven't really seen LSU, throughout fall camp through spring, go under center, go I formation, go in the heavy eye. We haven't seen too much of that through camp, and they should have had a package for it though, because to me, it's easier when you're in the I formation and you're under center, your running back's got a little head of steam already, than just running in the shotgun or the pistol and the running back's just getting the ball and he's just starting to move, right? So I like it when you're in the I formation or you're under center and your running back's already got a little bit of a head of steam when he gets the football. So that's why I like going under center a lot. I'm surprised LSU didn't go back to it more. You are right about that. But when you haven't run it as much during fall camp, and it's hard to run it on a more frequent basis, and we haven't really seen them go under center. Really, that time when we saw them do it, like, man, they're under center. We haven't seen them at all under center, but that's just the way it is. 100% agree. Jay Tucker. Okay, let's see. Broderick. Joe didn't trust Nuss, and Nuss didn't trust Joe or BK. I agree with that. I mean, it's just one of those marriages, right? Like, if you want to work, if you want to be in the college football playoff consideration, you want to be in a national championship picture, those three guys, your head coach, your OC, your quarterback, they all have to be on the same page. And when they're all yelling at each other, arguing with each other, that is not a good sign because that means they're not all on the same page and they're not all bought in. So, yeah, I'm not sure if it was one of those things where Nuss didn't like how Joe was calling plays, or Brian Kelly was frustrated with Garrett Nussmeier's decision making, or it was just kind of like all of the above. But it just went awry, for LSU. And to be honest with you, I mean, a change can somewhat ignite a football team. You got a new head coach, interim head coach. You got a new offensive coordinator now in Alex Atkins. Alex Atkins is calling the plays. Do you make a serious consideration for Michael Van Buren to be the quarterback the next 4 games? Just because I'm not going to hate on Garrett because Garrett, I respect Garrett. Garrett waited his time at LSU. He could have easily gone to the transfer portal. He could have easily gone somewhere else, but he decided to stay at LSU. He waited his turn, and he did some great things at LSU. Like the season he had last year. Do y'all realize the season he had last year was the second best passing season in LSU football history, only behind Joe Burrow? But he did have a better offensive line protecting him last year. He did have, it seems like, a more, I want to say better receiving core, but he was more in tune with his receivers. Like he had a little bit of more chemistry with his receivers last year. And Mason Taylor, Mason Taylor, Kyron Lacey, it seemed like he had a really good rapport with those guys, right? And I think with some veteran receivers, I asked Brian Kelly about this before, about getting these transfer receivers in, is trying to find the rhythm. Is it the connection a little bit off with some of these receivers? And he thought it wasn't, but I thought it was a little bit off of the chemistry, the timing between Nussmeier and the receivers, especially early in the season. And that's just something that, improves over time, but you didn't really see that rapport, that same type of rapport he had with the receivers last year. He obviously had a better offensive line protecting him the year before. So there's some couple things there. We talk about that with Garrett Nussmeier. And yeah, the whole thing, trust is a big thing. And I think you put the nail on the head there, Broderick. And I don't think any of those guys really trusted each other. And that can go awry, especially those are really the 3 really big faces of your team, right? Your head coach, your OC, and your quarterback, especially if you want success. And they have to be on the same page, and they weren't on the same page. They need to be aggressive with the run game, fire off the ball, and attack the D-line. Yeah, that's old style LSU football. You can say what you want about the Les Miles era, but you knew they're going to be the physical football team. They're going to wear you down, and they're going to be the more physical football team. You're going to say that about Les Miles football teams, right? What LSU? I think they're going to run the football a lot more, because look at the background of who's running the team right now. The head coach at LSU right now, Frank Wilson, is the running backs coach. So, of course, they're going to run the football a lot more. Your offensive coordinator is Alex Atkins. You know what his role was with the team? He was the running game coordinator. Of course, they're going to run the football a lot more. Now, how much better can you be? I think LSU found a spark. And there is some positives to talk about LSU offensively. Trust me, there have not been a lot to point to. Well, there's 2 things I want to point out about LSU's offense so far. It's been 2 things. It's been Harlem Berry and how you got a little bit of a spark with him. Harlem, what makes him so unique, and he's your best runner at LSU right now, of the guys they played, right? So what makes him unique is his patience, okay? So he's got great vision. He sees the hole, but he's also explosive. he can hit that gear and like that, kind of like Le'Veon Bell, quickness and patience he has. And he's definitely out of the guys they played. He is their guy. And you have to be able to continue to feed him. He's been averaging like 6-7 yards per carry. You just got to touch the football more. So I think LSU's going to do that. I think Frank's going to do that. Alex Atkins is going to do that. And then Trey Green. You got to get Trey Green involved in the passing game because he's been such a mismatch, a weapon, a unicorn. You can say what all you can say. But one of the positive bright spots of this offense, of this LSU offense, has been Trey Green and just being a mismatch all over the football field. So you're going to see them continue to use that. Now, Frank Wilson did say that he is going to still stick with Garrett Nussmeier, but who knows? It might be one of those things where Garrett Nussmeier gets another shot. He starts. He gets 2 drives. And Frank Wilson, hey, he's the interim coach, so he's probably more willing to make decisions. So knowing that, hey, he's got really nothing to lose here. So if he doesn't like what he sees with Garrett, he might say, hey, Van Buren, get in the football game, see what you can do. I really hope LSU does that because not to really hate on Garrett. Garrett's given a lot to LSU, and he deserves the opportunity to show what he can do. But at the time, I think the ship has sailed. You don't want to rile his confidence even more. Save that whatever draft stock he has left, and to say, hey man, it's not in the cards this year. Go get ready for the NFL. Like, we want to see what Michael Van Buren can do because after all, Michael Van Buren has years of eligibility left. You want to see where you're at the quarterback position going into next year too, knowing that the season is pretty much about over in terms of your goals of a college football playoff or a national championship and all that. So see what Michael Van Buren can do for you. I think he's a better fit for what they have with the offensive line because the offensive line has struggled. So when you have a struggling offensive line, what type of quarterback do you need? A quarterback that can extend plays and make plays for you when plays are not there to be made. So a broken play, instead of an incomplete pass or a sack, it can be a 2-3 yard gain, because of his ability to run, right? And I think he's shown some flashes. The Southeastern game, he looked really good. Now, these are all like in mop-up kind of duty action. Defenses are playing kind of off a little bit more. He looked good in that touchdown drive late in the game against Texas A&M. I think there's going to be a little bit of a shorter leash now with a new regime coming in. I think there'll be a little shorter leash on Garrett Nussmeier, and I think you'll see more opportunities for Michael Van Buren to play. And they said they got to get Michael Van Buren ready. They want to try to give him some packages, but I think you're going to see more and more of Michael Van Buren because you kind of need to find out what you got there, whether you need to keep if he's going to be your guy next year. You need to find out. You need to find out if he's going to be your guy next year at quarterback, or you need to go if the head coach. That way he sees some film and say, hey, maybe Van Buren's their guy, or we go out and we get a quarterback in the portal or recruit a quarterback in the class. So those are things they have to kind of talk about. All right, guys, I think that's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. Like I said, please subscribe, please like and share out the show. Thank you all so much for everybody that's commented on the show today. So Jay Tucker, Broderick, Cameron, Melissa, Trevor. Thank you all guys for watching. We'll be here once again. It's a bye week, so no show on Sunday because there's no LSU game to talk about on Sunday, obviously. But we will be back on Wednesday. It's Alabama week. We'll talk about the Alabama game, what to expect for the Crimson Tide, and what should be, hey, I think Brandon Taylor said today, like, hey, our season's over. Let's go ruin it for everybody else. And then let's make things really interesting in this coaching search, especially if Frank Wilson can go and lead LSU to win over Alabama and Tuscaloosa, man, does that make things interesting. with the coaching search. So, guys, thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to go to our website, gridironfootballusa.com, for all of our coverage, LSU, high school football coverage, and all of that. But thank y'all guys for watching The Chase with Jace, and we'll see y'all next time on their episode, once again, of The Chase with Jace.